Welcome to From Separation to Settlement, a family law podcast.
Welcome back to From Separation to Settlement with Jeffrey Hale. Jeff is a litigation partner at Kroner Hale Law Firm, where he helps families navigate the complexities of custody, visitation, and parental rights in Ohio. I'm Kevin Rosenquist, and today we're exploring a topic that touches many families: grandparents' rights. When can grandparents seek custody or visitation, and what does the law actually say? Jeff, welcome back.
Thank you, Kevin. Glad to be back. So
what are grandparents' rights in Ohio, and when do they apply?
So grandparents' rights are actually, they've changed that name. That was an old nomenclature for them. They're now actually called companionship rights. So the idea being is that practically anyone can file for companionship rights as long as they can prove to the court that they have a beneficial relationship with the child and that it's in the best interest of that child to have that relationship continue. So companionship rights are not only isolated to grandparents any longer. It's really anyone that can show that they have a good relationship with the child and that it's in that child's best interest.
Okay. Interesting. So does it matter if the parents are still together or divorced?
So it does matter. So the courts will typically, unless it's a child protective services issue, the courts will not, if the family unit is still together, if mother and father are together, then the courts are not going to get involved and determine who's allowed to see, the children. The parents are going to be given the respect to make that decision for their family. So companionship rights / grandparent rights come in when you have parties that have been divorced or mother and father who are no longer together. And then that's when you can petition for companionship rights of, whichever child it may be.
That makes sense, because if both parents are together, they may have a reason that they don't want, someone around their kid, whether it's just a contentious relationship or whatever. And you'd like to think that both parents are, they can make the decision together, rather than when they're separated, they may be trying to position certain things so that certain people can't see them just out of spite.
Yeah, absolutely. So a common scenario would just be that one party or the other will decide, they'll split up. One party has custody, and for this scenario, it'd be mother has custody and she doesn't want to let father's parents see the child.
Mm-hmm.
So then the court will allow you to petition for companionship rights, because assuming at one point in time, these grandparents were heavily involved in this child's life. And when these two split, all of a sudden they become the bad grandparents and
right.
You don't get to see them anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
if you were allowed to do that when the parents are still together, there'd be people all over the place taking up court time, trying to get in there, hey, these parents won't let me see my grandkid or my niece or something like that. And that would just bombard the courts.
Absolutely. The courts are crowded enough as
Right.
it is. So they have to draw the line. If the family unit is still intact, then, like I said, unless there's an abuse, dependency, or neglect issue, the courts they're not going to tell them how to raise their kids.
Mm-hmm. Are there differences between why the parents aren't together? Like, for example, if it's divorced, separated, or even if one parent passed away, do they look at it differently, or is it all kind of in the same bucket?
No, it falls into, it falls in the same bucket, because that's the first thing that the court's going to look at is this family unit still together?
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not, then they'll look at, what was the relationship between the petitioners for companionship rights and the child they're petitioning to see? And is that relationship in the best interest to be continued with that child?
Mm-hmm. And what are the factors that the court considers? Obviously, you already mentioned, the relationship that they had, but more specifically, what are the things that they'll look at when deciding whether, grandparent visitation or others is in the child's best interest?
So the big thing is that relationship. So you're just establishing through any evidence you have, pictures, text messages, notes, birthday cards, receipts for Christmas gifts. You're just establishing that these individuals that are petitioning for companionship have played a big role in this child's life. A lot of times we will have issues where when we file for companionship, the people filing have lived with this child for many years or have babysat this child while mom or dad were off at work, and they've basically been a co-care provider
Yeah.
for
Help
this
raise them.
child.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden now the two adult parents are not together anymore, and now all of a sudden the grandparents on either side have become the bad people, and you're no longer allowed to see them. And so the courts look at what kind of detriment is that going to do to the child. Is it more harmful to exclude them from that child's life than it is to allow them to maintain that relationship on some level?
Are there situations where the grandparents could seek full custody?
Absolutely. We see that a lot in, unfortunately, in instances where there's been drugs and abuse. Then we see a lot. And lately, probably over the past 15 to 10 years, it's been a lot more prevalent because of the opioid crisis. So we've seen a lot of grandparents having to step up and raise their grandchildren.
Yeah, I'm a big sports fan, and I see that in sports a lot. You hear athletes talk about how they were their grandparents raised them for one reason or another. And is it hard to get that full custody?
So if they're petitioning for full custody, that's not just a maintaining the relationship type of petition. That's actually a custody petition, and you have to prove, if you're a non-parent going for custody against a parent, you have to prove that parent is unfit.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times those cases come into play with child protective services. It's more rare that you would petition for custody and not have child protective services involved when you're going against another parent.
Does the court look at it differently if it's step grandparents versus biological?
Not just in a typical companionship motion for a companionship. They look at the relationship. So even if you were just a step grandparent, they're still going to look at the relationship that was developed. They're going to look at all of your actions leading up to the other parent's decision to separate from you. So it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same factors. It's going to be the same level of proof that you want to bring in and show that you had this relationship and that it's in the best interest of the child to continue that relationship.
Mm-hmm. So really then, even if it could be a biological grandparent or a close family friend, same thing. The court looks at it the same, just looks at the relationship itself.
Correct.
Okay.
That's all they're going to look at, is because that's the main factor, is the relationship, and is it best to continue this? Yeah.
It's got to be kind of tough on the courts to sort of balance, a parent's right to make decisions with a grandparent's request for time. I mean, it could be a tough spot, huh?
It is. And now keep in mind that companionship rights it's not like parenting time. You're not going to get every other weekend, and you're not going to get, 50-50 time.
Sure.
And that's what we have to explain to people, is that when you're looking at companionship rights, you're looking at maintaining the relationship, not getting parenting time. You're not going to co-parent with this other person. What you're going to get is you'll get some holiday times. If in some situations, maybe you get an overnight, you get an overnight once a month, but it's definitely not the same as getting parenting time, because, obviously you're not the parent. So we're not going to take that much time away from the actual parent. But in order to maintain that relationship, you would get the time typically as to what they would think a grandparent would have. You would see them on holidays. maybe once a month you go spend the night at grandma or grandpa's house. So that is the kind of contact that they would be getting, not full blown, parenting time.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction too, because I see what you're saying. And does this come up a lot? Do you see a lot of these cases?
We do. We see quite a few of these cases, and a lot of them actually come in the obviously grandparents do, but a lot of them come in when we've had clients that divorce, and it's been a blended family, so there are stepchildren on each side, and we've had quite a few where even after this divorce is over, they come back and petition for companionship with their stepchildren because they may have raised them since they were a very, very young age. And this has been, for all intents and purposes, this has been a father figure or a mother figure in their life. And when you divorce, that doesn't stop that relationship. And it's definitely not going to stop the hurt that the children would feel.
Yeah.
So we've had cases where they will, you'll have an ex-wife or an ex-husband petition for companionship time with stepchildren or their prior stepchildren.
Yeah, you hope these situations that the parents think of the kids and what's best for the kids, but obviously sometimes emotions can get the best of you, and they don't always think like that.
Yeah, that's very true. All of this, everything we do is typically it's in a very emotional setting.
Yeah.
So it's not uncommon to have the knee-jerk reaction to, for lack of a better term, circle their wagons and pull everybody in and push all the bad people out. But the reality is, once you talk through and you start explaining things to people, then, hopefully they'll take that and kind of let go of that a little bit, because you may not like that. You may not like that person today, but at one point in time, you like them enough to let them help raise your children. So at the very least, you can help them maintain that relationship as long as it was a healthy relationship.
Right. Yeah. Of course, all this is assuming it was a good relationship and the child actually does want that person in their life.
Correct.
Yeah. So if a grandparent or somebody, companionship situation, if they're being denied access, what's the first step that they should take?
Assuming that you have tried to work it out with the other party
Sure.
and explain to them what your intent is, what you'd hope to have, the next step would be to contact an attorney. We can sit down, we can look over your situation, and we give free consultations. So we will look over your situation, talk to you about what's going on, and then we can tell you whether or not we can help you. And unfortunately we've had to tell a lot of people that this just is, I don't think this is a good case for you. And those are situations where, I guess in my experience, I felt that the relationship was not as strong, or maybe not good at all. And it's more of them trying to just keep digging at the other parent in some form through the law. So sometimes you have to weed that out, but more likely than not, most of the people we get in, we can help. All they want is to maintain that relationship. They've grown to love that child or those children just as much as the parent has. And in most instances, sometimes they've been able to provide more based on their situation. And so we try to help them maintain that relationship. And the only way to do that is to get the court, because outside of the court, the parent's going to have all the legal rights.
Mm-hmm. So do most of these end up in front of a judge? Is there a mediation process that happens first? Is it more like an arbitration? What does the process look like?
All of them eventually go to a judge. Judge has to sign everything. So the beginning process of that obviously is filing that petition for companionship time. But then the courts, at least here in Claremont County and the surrounding counties, typically offer free mediation. So I tell people all the time, this is free.
Mm-hmm.
It's you and the other person and a trained mediator that will go and sit down and see if you can talk through it. So we will send them to do the free mediation, and we tell them this could save you a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of heartache if you two can come to an agreement, because this is the part of it they can control. They can reach an agreement. They can set the terms of the agreement. So they have control over this. If you go in front of a judge, you can have all the best evidence in the world, but nobody knows what the judge is thinking.
In your experience, do they get denied often? Is it by the judge when it gets to that point? Is there a percentage of success versus denial that you see as a general rule?
I would say in most instances, if you have enough to establish that relationship, how good it was, and that it's in the best interest, the courts are going to allow it. The big question always comes in is how much they allow. So the court can allow it, and it could be you get to see them for 2 hours on Christmas once a year, or it could be you get some time on holidays and you get one overnight a month. I mean, so even by granting it, the court still holds so much power over how often they have to allow it. So it's not just getting it granted. Getting it granted, if you take the time to prepare the case, it's pretty common. It's that time. It's that little piece of how much do you get to see them.
What happens if a parent doesn't abide by the court order? What if they still keep the child away from the other party?
Then it's like any court order. If it's not being followed, then you go back to your attorney and you have the option of filing for contempt. And so then the party can be held in contempt. You can get makeup time. You can get attorney's fees awarded for having to go in and have the court order them to follow an order that they already gave. And ultimately, contempt can, in some instances, it's very, very rare, very extreme, but the contempt can land that person in jail for a few days.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because obviously that's an extreme case to go that far, I would imagine.
Yeah, any contempt, any finding of contempt comes with I call it the saving grace. It's the opportunity to purge yourself. So if you get found in contempt, they will give you what's called a purge order. So you have a date certain that you can do what the court has told you to do, pay the fees, get the makeup time, and then the contempt goes away like it never happened. Now, if you come back on that purge date and you haven't done it, then you could have more punishment, or the court could just enforce, the possibility of jail time.
Wow. Well, let's hope it doesn't go to that level too often.
Yeah, I've not seen. I've probably had maybe one or two people ever go to jail, and I would have to say that they completely brought that on themselves.
Right. Yeah, I would imagine, given everything we've talked about today, if it gets to that point, you kind of brought that on yourself.
Yeah. That's you've done everything you can to force the judge's hand at that point.
Right. All right. Well, thanks for listening to From Separation to Settlement. If you're a grandparent trying to stay involved in your grandchild's life, you can visit kronerlaw.com to learn how Jeff Hale can help. Be sure to like and subscribe and share these episodes with someone who you think could use the support. Jeff, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin. Glad to be here.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.